We're going to switch over to Uautomate now, and essentially this is where we can run our automated scripts and schedules. So we've got 3 configured, and they're actually related to the two ways that we use Uautomate typically. So you can see we've got power saving, so morning power on, evening power off, and then we have that second way, which is that overnight active room check, which obviously you can see straight away is a much longer check, but again, it performs 16 different elements every single day. So if we look at one of these, we're going to take the morning power on as an example. So here we're turning the system on. We're going to wait a period and then actually check that the system is operating the way that it should be, based on that power script. So the first thing we do is the device health check block. Essentially, this checks that all devices were connected to Utelogy at the time of the test running, because something may have gone off overnight and come back on when we come back to work the next day. But essentially, we need to make sure that if we're sending the power on command to that display, that both the display and everything else in the room were on the network at the time we wanted to do that. And essentially, if they're not, we almost want to fail that check before we even begin, because we know at that point it's not going to receive its power on command. So other things we've got, system macro power on. So we've actually got the ability to power on that system. So you can see here, we're just recalling the macro to do so. We've then got the delay built in, as I mentioned. So we're going to give that screen 60 seconds to actually switch on. And then we're actually going to build the state checks. So this is the important bit. We're now actually checking that the goal of the test has been met, or the script. So we're going to say, does the display power equal to on, essentially? And if that condition is not met, we're actually going to throw an error and give a message to that technician to say, display did not switch on. So when he comes in first thing in the morning, he'll go to this test log in the section, which we'll get to in just a short while, and he'll actually get a report and he'll tell him exactly what's gone wrong in that space and actually what he needs to do to resolve those issues. The final check in here is actually that we want to make sure that that display source is equal to HDMI at the same time, because obviously turning it on is one thing, but making sure it's showing content is another. So we want to make sure that we're actually receiving, we're on the right input, ready to receive content. The power off is much the same schedule, and then we've actually got our active overnight room check, where we're actually, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot more. So start's very similar. So we're going to have a device health check everything's online. We're then going to run a system macro again to turn the display on. And then this is the new section where we're actually going to start performing an audio check. So we break that into a section called audio check. We then effectively start the test tone. So that's actually using one of the devices in the room to generate an audio test tone in the space. So it will be making noise. So again, typically this is something that we run overnight when no one's going to be using those spaces. We then added delay in to allow that noise to play from the speaker and actually to propagate around the room. And then we do a check audio level. So actually we ask the system to check the audio level. It does do it on an interval, but it doesn't do it very frequently, because typically we don't need that. But obviously during an active check, we need to poll that during the check. So it's quite important that we send that command. And then the important thing here, we're actually saying that we want to make sure our ceiling mic audio meter decibel level is greater than or equal to currently 15 decibels. However, we might want to increase that depending on the threshold or the requirements of that space. So we want to make sure we get that. If we don't receive 15 decibels, we're actually going to throw an error and say the audio level not met required threshold, prompting a technician to go to that space and actually check the audio system to make sure it's working the way that it should be. We then simply state check the display, and then essentially we do a system power off, so shut the system back down, and then the final thing that we do is actually make sure that that system is switched off, because obviously what we don't want to do is ruin our sort of power saving and what we're trying to achieve by leaving the system on off through our scheduled script.